Earlier this week, protesters, no, insurrectionists, stormed the Capitol in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, took over, screamed for their cause. I mean, this is the sort of thing that is, meant to be condemned as domestic terrorism, but their cause was transgender rights, so everything's okay. Here's a quick look at what it was like. My family is in Oklahoma. I've been there a lot. They're not Oklahoma. That said, they were protesting a proposed bill right now making its way through the state legislature, and it's similar to bills making their way through many state legislatures that would actually prohibit experimental hormone therapies and puberty blockers and even surgical procedures on minor children for gender transition. Just so you know, in the state of Oklahoma, if you're under 18 years old, you can't get a tattoo. Even with your parents' permission, you can't get a tattoo if you're under 18, but you can get these procedures. And they're fighting to keep that legal. Joining us right now is Kelsey Bolar. Now, she's a senior policy analyst at Independent Women's Forum, but of course you know her as the creator and director of the great docuseries Identity Crisis. Kelsey, thank you for being here.
Hi, Larry. Thanks for having me.
I wanted to have you on to talk about this issue, not specifically the legislation, but the whole idea of detransitioners and those people who get these procedures done when they're teenagers and then later they regret it, because this is a focus of many of the people you talk about in your docuseries.
Yeah, Larry, at that protest, you heard them shouting trans lives matter. What's really sad about that is trans lives only matter when they fit a certain political agenda. The second a transgender identified individual changes their minds and realizes that the hormones, the surgeries are not making them whole, are not making them happy, they are completely abandoned. They are abandoned by these activists. They are abandoned by the politicians. And importantly, they are abandoned by the medical community who push them down this path to pursue these experimental drugs and treatments. And so it really is important to consider all the different experiences that individuals have had regarding this gender ideology experiment. And what we're learning more and more is it's pretty horrific for those who later come to regret it and change their minds. So there's really no question that we should be allowing children to do this.
And we've noticed, Kelsey, as this discussion continues in every home in this country, I would think at this point, that there's a certain segment of the media where they will talk to those people who are protesting in the Oklahoma State Capitol, but they won't talk to the people you're talking to, Kelsey. Let's look at the latest episode of Identity Crisis that you can get over the Independent Women's Forum website. It's a great series, mini documentaries. And this woman's story breaks your heart. Take a look.
My name is Chloe Cole, and I'm an 18-year-old detransitioner from the Central Valley of California. I started socially transitioning and identifying as transgender when I was 12 years old, and I was fast-tracked onto medicalization at 13, starting with puberty blockers and testosterone, before I went on to get a mastectomy at 15, and I stopped transitioning at 16 when I realized that I had regretted my transition and that it was starting to cause me emotional and also physical harm.
Yeah, Chloe Cole's become a real outspoken advocate on behalf of children since she was a child and she had to deal with this. But when you hear her story, it sounds like there was nobody in the room trying to give some alternative therapy or a second opinion. Kelsey, seems like a pretty drastic path to go down without any kind of alternate solution from the medical profession.
Yeah, Chloe's voice, thankfully, has been prominent amongst conservative media. Individuals like yourself are willing to listen to her story and feature it on your programs. Unfortunately, her story is still very much siloed to conservative press. And I think that's because it is so inconvenient to the transgender agenda, to see and hear someone who was a child go down this path and experience such traumatic mental and physical repercussions because of it. After interviewing Chloe, she told me there's so many children who are currently doing this now, pursuing actual surgeries, not just the puberty blockers, sex hormones. And so she bravely is stepping up, giving them a voice. In our series, we do try to feature a diversity of voices, not just those who you've already heard from in the public, but Chloe's story as someone who was started on puberty blockers at such a young age is so important to hear and understand and listen to. And I can only hope that the mainstream press will start to pay attention to her story and all those out there like hers who are going down this path as a child and shortly thereafter coming to regret it.
Yeah, thank you. And I two quick questions on this that I want to get to. The first is the temporary nature of these puberty blockers and hormone therapy. We keep hearing that all the time. This is just temporary. Just puts a pause button on puberty. Was that Chloe's experience? Was that the experience of some of the other young women that you talked to?
Absolutely not. It's difficult. It's a very vulnerable position to have to talk about the side effects that puberty blockers and hormones are still having on their bodies. But these detransitioners have to about facing sexual dysfunction as a result of decisions they made as children. They don't know the status of their fertility. They're unable to breastfeed. That was something they never thought about. They couldn't begin to comprehend the prospect of as a child. And these are so experimental. There's actually, the beginnings of coverage about the fact that we don't know the effects of puberty blockers and hormones on the brain. And to put children on this when we don't know that is just really scary. And it's important to note that countries in Europe, which started down this path far earlier than we did, they are pumping the brakes. They are shutting down their gender clinics. And for some reason in the United States, we're moving in the opposite direction. And these activists who are storming state capitals don't seem to care to pay any attention about the evidence, the research coming out about why European countries are moving in the opposite direction.
Thank you for that. And the other question I have is that because this is a trend, and I so implore people to see this docu-series, Identity Crisis. Each one is a little vignette. It's not a huge investment of your time, but you start to see patterns with these women who have dealt with this. And Chloe, in that clip, she points it out. When she was 12, she began by using alternate pronouns and a different name. Again, we're told by the professionals, whether they're school counselors, teachers, administrators, why they became experts on this, I'll never know, or from psychologists, that that's okay. That doesn't have an impact. That's just, putting your toe in the water. It actually has a major impact, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up because it is not harmless to quote unquote socially transitioned children. And the fact that lawmakers and public schools and private schools even want to keep parents in the dark, keep this social transitioning of children a secret from parents is so wrong. This directly affects children's mental and physical health. And to be trying to keep parents in the dark about this is really an attempt to sever the most basic bonds between parent and child because nobody cares about that child more than that child's own parent. I've talked to countless parents who have children who have struggled with identity issues. They're not going to abandon them. They are going to double down their love and support and be there for their child as they work through this. They have a right to do that. And it is unacceptable that any institution with any sort of power would try to strip parents of that ability. It's encouraging to finally see lawmakers in different states, including Virginia, step up and no longer allow that to happen.
Yeah, amen to that. I completely agree with you. And listen, we're going to continue having this conversation. It's something we care deeply about, and we firmly believe we are on the right side of history on this, to borrow a phrase that's exploited by the left. Kelsey, we're going to have you back. I know that you're working on a story now about how the medical profession pretty much abandons these young women when they decide to detransition and correct the mistake they made. And that's a shame on the medical profession. And we will put a spotlight on that next time we talk to Kelsey Bolar. In the meantime, check out the series, Independent Women's Forum. There's more to come on O'Connor Tonight.